Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Tim and Tom's Film Nights. We are your hosts, Timothy and Thomas, here to discuss and debate our favorite films from every genre imaginable. Today, we're delving into the world of martial arts drama with one of the most iconic movies of all time, The Karate Kid. Now, before we dive headfirst into this classic film, let me just say what a pleasure it is to have you all here with us tonight.
Thank you, Thomas. I couldn't agree more. The Karate Kid is truly one of those films that transcends generations and continues to resonate with audiences even today. As for my initial thoughts on the film, I must admit that while it's not typically my cup of tea when it comes to drama, there's something undeniably charming about this underdog story. The chemistry between Daniel San and Mr. Miyagi is simply unmatched, and it's hard not to root for their unlikely friendship throughout the film.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Timothy. I, on the other hand, am more of a fan of action-packed blockbusters than emotional dramas. Don't get me wrong. There are some great moments in The Karate Kid that tug at your heartstrings, but overall, it just doesn't quite hit the spot for me. That being said, I do appreciate the themes of perseverance, and self-improvement that run throughout the film. And who could forget that iconic crane kick at the end?
Well, Tom, we certainly can't deny that The Karate Kid has left an indelible mark on popular culture. But let's not forget the brilliant performances by Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita as Daniel San and Mr. Miyagi, respectively. They really brought these characters to life and made us care about their journey.
I couldn't agree more, Timothy. Both of these actors did an incredible job with their roles. However, I have to say that for me, the standout performance was actually by William Zabka as Johnny Lawrence. His portrayal of the arrogant, yet ultimately flawed antagonist was spot on and added a great deal of depth to the film.
While I do appreciate your point of view, Tom, I must say that I found the character development of Johnny to be somewhat lacking.
Yes.
He undergoes some changes throughout the movie, but they feel more like surface-level transformations than genuine growth. But enough about my nitpicks. Let's discuss the plot a bit further. So, Thomas, what are your thoughts on the overall narrative of The Karate Kid?
Well, Timothy, I think the plot of The Karate Kid is quite simple yet effective. We have our protagonist, Daniel San, who's forced to adapt to a new environment and deal with bullying at school. Enter Mr. Miyagi, the wise mentor figure who teaches him not only karate, but also valuable life lessons along the way. Through their unlikely friendship and rigorous training, they both overcome obstacles and learn important lessons about perseverance, self-confidence, and respect. The climactic tournament showdown between Daniel and his bully Johnny is just a perfect culmination of everything they've been through throughout the film. However, I do have some issues with the portrayal of the Cobra Kai dojo as purely evil. While their methods might be questionable, it's a bit black and white to paint them all as villains. Also, the romantic subplot between Daniel and Ali Mills felt somewhat forced and unnecessary, in my opinion. But these are just nitpicks. Overall, The Karate Kid remains a classic underdog story that continues to resonate with audiences even today.
While I can see where you're coming from, Thomas, I think the contrast between Mr. Miyagi's gentle approach and Mr. Miyagi's more aggressive style of teaching is deliberately drawn to emphasize the importance of balance and humility in martial arts as well as life. As for the romance between Daniel and Ali, it does serve to add some much-needed depth to his character arc. It helps him develop self-worth and confidence that translates directly into his karate training. And speaking of trivia, Thomas, did you know that the iconic wax-on, wax-off scene was actually improvised by the late, great Pat Morita? He reportedly came up with it on set, and it ended up becoming one of the most iconic moments in film history. So, do you have any interesting trivia to share about the Karate Kid, Thomas?
Oh, Timothy, you know how much I love a good trivia session. So, let me share with our viewers some fun facts about the Karate Kid. Firstly, the iconic wax-on, wax-off scene I mentioned earlier was improvised by the late, great Pat Morita. However, the original line in the script had Mr. Miyagi instructing Daniel to sandpaper the deck, which doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Huh? Secondly, the infamous Karate Kid theme song was actually written by a 19-year-old named Bill Conti, who had no prior experience in composing for films. The lyrics were later added by a lyricist named Cynthia Weil. And guess what? The entire soundtrack only took them 3 days to create. Lastly, did you know that the iconic karate tournament scene was actually filmed at the legendary 1984 All Valley Karate Championship held at the Pasadena Convention Center in California? This added a layer of authenticity to the film and gave it an even more genuine feel. So, Timothy, what do you think about these tidbits? Any other interesting facts or trivia about the Karate Kid that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Oh, Tom, you've certainly unleashed a veritable Trojan horse of trivia today, haven't you? I must say that the authenticity you mentioned earlier adds tremendously to the film's credibility. It's no surprise that many aspiring martial artists were inspired by the Karate Kid's portrayal of karate as a means of self-defense and personal growth. As for my own thoughts on the script, I believe the screenplay written by Robert Mark Kamen does an exceptional job of blending action with heartfelt moments of camaraderie and self-discovery. The character development, particularly that of Daniel San, is quite well crafted. Starting off as a timid, introverted teenager, he transforms into a confident, skilled karate practitioner who learns to stand up for himself and others. And speaking of transformations, the transformation, Mr. Miyagi from an eccentric, reclusive widower to a wise mentor figure is equally touching. Their unlikely friendship and mentorship arc is what truly elevates the Karate Kid from being just another martial arts movie. However, I do have some reservations about the portrayal of the Cobra Kai students as purely evil villains. Yes, they engage in bullying and intimidation, but it would have been more nuanced if their motivations were explored further. Despite these minor quibbles, the Karate Kid remains a classic underdog story that transcends time and cultures. So, Thomas, now it's your turn to share your thoughts on the script and direction of this timeless classic.
Well, Tim, I must admit that you have a point about the portrayal of the Cobra Kai students as purely evil villains. However, this was the 80s, and action movies often painted a black and white picture to create clear heroes and villains. But let's not dwell on the negatives too much, eh? Instead, I'd like to shift our conversation towards the incredible performances by the cast, particularly those of Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi and his apprentice, Daniel San, played by Ralph Macchio. Their chemistry on screen is truly electrifying, isn't it? They play off each other so well, you almost forget their acting. And let's not forget about the charming and talented Elizabeth Shue, who portrays Ollie Mills, Daniel's love interest. She brings a much-needed dose of innocence and vulnerability to the film. As for the direction by John G. Avildsen, he did an excellent job of capturing the essence of traditional martial arts while also incorporating some innovative camera angles and techniques that made the fight scenes even more thrilling. The film's cinematography by Gilbert M. Taylor is equally impressive, especially in the iconic karate tournament scene I mentioned earlier. The use of lighting and color creates a sense of urgency and anticipation that perfectly matches the intensity of the competition. So, Timothy, what do you think about my take on the performances and direction of the Karate Kid? Do you have any other thoughts or opinions to share with our viewers?
Well, Tom, I must admit that you've hit a few good points there. The performances were indeed top-notch, particularly those of Pat Morita and Ralph Macchio. Their portrayal of the unlikely mentor-student duo has become iconic in pop culture history. As for the direction by John G. Avildsen, he did an excellent job of capturing the essence of traditional martial arts while also incorporating some innovative techniques that made the fight scenes even more thrilling. The use of lighting and color during the karate tournament scene was particularly impressive. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the cultural impact of the Karate Kid, shall we? I believe one of the reasons why this film has stood the test of time is its ability to transcend language barriers and resonate with audiences from all corners of the globe. Its themes of self-discipline, perseverance, and personal growth are universal, qualities that people can relate to regardless of their cultural background. The film's portrayal of Japanese martial arts, specifically karate, also sparked a global interest in the sport. According to some reports, there was a significant increase in karate school enrollments following the film's release, and many schools even started offering classes dedicated to teaching the Karate Kid style of karate. The movie also introduced many Westerners to Japanese culture, including the art of calligraphy, which became quite popular among youngsters after watching Mr. Miyagi create beautiful works of art with just a bit of ink and paper. So, Thomas, do you have any thoughts on the cultural impact of the Karate Kid? How has this film resonated with you personally?
Well, Timothy, you've touched upon a few interesting points there. It's true that the Karate Kid not only introduced many Westerners to Japanese culture, but also sparked a global interest in martial arts, particularly karate. And it's heartening to hear about the positive influence the film had on people's lives by inspiring them to take up karate and explore Japanese culture further. As for me, personally, I must admit that while I don't necessarily share your passion for traditional martial arts or Japanese culture, there are elements of the Karate Kid that resonated with me deeply. The film's portrayal of an outcast teenager who finds acceptance and purpose through mentorship and hard work is something we all can relate to in some way. It teaches us the importance of self-discipline, perseverance, and respect for others, values that transcend culture and time. And speaking of cultural impact, let's not forget about the iconic theme from The Karate Kid by Bill Conti, which has become synonymous with karate movies in general. The 80s nostalgia factor certainly adds to the film's enduring appeal as well. As we wrap up our discussion tonight, I want to leave our viewers with a final thought. Despite its predictable plotline and cliches, The Karate Kid remains a timeless classic that continues to inspire generations. Its universal themes of underdog, triumph over adversity, and the power of mentorship resonate as strongly today as they did when the film first debuted in 1984. So, dear viewers, do yourself a favor. Track down a copy of The Karate Kid, pop some popcorn, and enjoy this classic tale of triumph over adversity. And don't forget to leave us a comment, subscribe, and hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed our discussion today.